Welcome into Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, and we have double barrel action in our pen for today's episode. That means I'm joined by Sean Zerillo and Collin Whitchurch to go through the entire Tuesday slate. We're also going to pepper in Grant Neiffer's dingers at the end of the episode. But let's start with this. You were red hot yesterday, Sean, in terms of what you brought up on the show. I think you only had one loser out of like 6 or 7 picks. But the Angels comeback took the cake. I mean, that was an incredible ninth inning for the Halos. 2 runs get walked in, so they were very patient at the dish. That ties things up. And then Taylor Ward hits a grand slam to have them break that game wide open. They win by 4 runs. I understand that you're grinding through hundreds of games per month. Does a comeback like that ever move the needle for you emotionally, or are you even keeled? Let's, pull a name out of nowhere here in terms of media members or celebrities that are even keeled. Bill Belichick, I don't know, just he's been in the news a little bit. You're just on to Cincinnati, you're just on to the next thing in your head, or do you get pretty hyped up when you win a bet like that?
I should get hyped up more because the losers like that really get to me. The winners just feel like fucking finally at this point, especially at this point in the season. I've had such strong CLV to this point of the year, and the results have been terrible. And yesterday, the CLV was not there, and the results were great. So it was nice to have the market generally move against me on Kansas City because Altuve was in ultimately for the Astros, and on the Padres just because I think they've been such a public team this year. There wasn't a lot of resistance on the Angels, but nice to see those bets actually cash for once. And I do think the market movement trending a little bit better today. I've tightened up the screws a little bit on the model. If you've noticed, the volume on my plays has been down, going from about 10 to 12 plays per day, closer to 7 to 8. So definitely tighten some things up in the model. The poor results just kind of motivated me to sharpen this thing up even more than I possibly could have, working with LLMs to try to add ideas, tweak things to make it a little bit more dynamic from game to game. So I'm actually very pleased with the directional correctness of the model that I've seen the past few days, regardless of the movement yesterday. Like I said, the Royals lineup situation, the Rangers roof ultimately being open, which we'll get to. But yeah, I think overall, I try to use the negative results as a way to motivate myself, just to make the model sharper overall, and try to continue to make this thing as easy and efficient as possible. And I think we are actually getting to that point. There's been some new things I've been able to incorporate this year, which I don't want to talk about publicly, but which I do think are sharpening up the process and the model overall.
This is some free advice for any sportsbook managers, executives out there listening. I think every one of these books should offer some kind of free promo or, boost or credits if you consistently have closing line value. Obviously, there's no bank that you can cash in that closing line value, but it does indicate that you are a sharp bettor if you're always ahead of the market. And I think it would be cool if they at least gave you a little pat on the head, even if it was just a 10% boost every month on one parlay. Like, give us something, because it can be hard.
The pat on the head is a letter via email notifying you that your account has been restricted to $9.53 per bet. That's the reward that you get for CLV at sportsbooks. I'd love to win without CLV because I could keep all of my accounts and continue winning. Losing with CLV is the double negative, because not only is your account getting flagged, but you're also losing money in the process. So a little bit worried once the results turn in some of these accounts that they may get shut down.
All right, we're going to go to best bets now for the Tuesday slate. And Colin, I'm going to get you involved first. You're looking at the Tigers money line. From an ERA perspective, Bello for the Red Sox has been impressive this season. But when you look at some of his command issues, he's issued 12 walks in 22 and a third innings worth of work. Is that where the handicap starts for you in terms of him losing the strike zone a little bit and getting some runners in scoring position for the Tigers?
Yeah, more than anything, I would say this bet is on expected regression from Brian Bayo. ERA 2.01, as you mentioned, sparkling. First 4 starts of the season. He's walking just about as many batters as he's striking out. Even more so, the pitch rating models are actually showing a decrease in his stuff this year. His slider has been his best pitch throughout his career. I've seen it take a little bit of a step backward this year. The Tigers side of things, I understand why the line is the way it is. The Tigers are slight underdogs here, getting them around the plus 100 to minus 105 range. They're going with an opener today ahead of Cater Montero. I actually like the strategy a lot today. If they run out Tyler Holton, let's say for the first inning, which is what some are projecting, then they'll have a lefty going up against Jarren Duran and Rafael Devers, red hot Rafael Devers, to start the game, as well as Alex Bregman. Hand the ball to Montero, and all of a sudden those hitters become the bottom of the order for him. Montero was a steady swing arm for the Tigers last year. He's operating kind of in a similar capacity this year, coming up to make these starts. Casey Mize just went on the IL for them. He's been more wild than effective this year, though. 10 walks and 21 and 2/3 innings. But he's going against a team with a bottom 10 walk rate today in the Red Sox. So I like his chances to get through, the fifth, maybe into the sixth inning today, especially with the opener there in front of him. And then, as I mentioned, Bayo. I'm very much selling his hot start. The Tigers are the better team here overall. We saw them absolutely beat the snot out of Tanner Houck last night. I'm actually a little bit surprised that the Tigers are being listed as underdogs here. I think that the books are overrating Bayo a little bit and underrating the Tigers' pitching plan. If there is a manager equipped to work out an opener / kind of quasi bullpen game, it's AJ Hinch. I trust him more than anyone to do that, so I like the Tigers here as slight underdogs.
Red Sox also have chemistry issues, potentially shopping Rafael Devers. Like, is their clubhouse currently imploding right now?
Yeah, and he's just beating the crap out of the ball while all this is going on too. And this is not new for the Red Sox either. They've treated stars poorly in the past. John Lester, Mookie Betts, run guys out of town, and this whole Devers controversy. It's just really funny because it's happening. Devers started the year absolutely terribly. I think he was like 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts in the first week of the season or something like that. And now he can't miss. He's getting on base every single time. He's hitting homer after homer, and they're telling him to play first base, and he's telling him to fuck off, and while also hitting the crap out of the ball. I love it. I think it's very player empowerment worthy for Devers to do that. It's one thing to say, hey, play DH. We acquired a better third baseman. And now they're sitting here saying, hey, can you play this position you've never played before in the middle of the season? And he's saying no, and also being their best hitter in the process.
I should just mention, I bet the over in this game. I like the over 8.5 to about even money. I made this about 8.75. Not the best over weather. The wind is blowing in, but a lot of it is Bayo. Velocity is down a tick this year. As you mentioned, the stuff has plummeted. Also, the changeup is up 2 ticks, and the separation between his fastball and his changeup is now 6 miles an hour instead of 8 to 10, which is usually that sweet spot. It was 8 miles an hour last year. The slider, too, he was just falling off of a cliff. So, yeah, stuff for Bayo way down, coming off of shoulder soreness in spring training. That 2 ERA, an absolute aberration. 5.6 expected ERA, much closer to what he deserves at the moment. And Montero, career 4.5 expected ERA, so not a guy I'm particularly high on. Like the over in that matchup. Opened up really late last night because the Tigers kind of helped their pitching plans in secret. That total didn't really hit the board until about 12:30, 1 a.m. But definitely like the over up to 8.5 at even money. Would even go up to -110, honestly. I had difficulty adjusting that total relative to market when it opened up. I like to average in some of the market into it, and there really wasn't much available when I projected it. So 8.5 -110, fine on the Red Sox. Tigers over.
To piggyback on what you're saying, Colin, producer David, if you could drop in that Moneyball scene, be like, go ahead and tell him how easy it is to play first base. It's incredibly difficult to play first base. All right, in terms of your best bet, Sean, you're back to the well with a Colorado-Texas under. Yesterday, it was sweat-free. There was 3 total runs, just 9 total hits between the Rockies and Rangers. Back for more here on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it was a bigger sweat right after we finished the podcast because I saw a tweet from the Rangers that the roof would be open that night. And I was like, great. I just talked about on the pod how if the roof is open, I would have to consider buying out. But double check the weather. It was, fine yesterday. There was no wind blowing out. It basically played like a league average park. So my total only went up from about 8 to 8.25. I didn't end up buying off of any part of the under, which was good to see. But just want to reiterate, the Rangers now continue to be the best under team in baseball this season, 28-13-1 overall. And the Rockies are 14-6 to the under away from Coors Field. Again, a 51 WRC plus on the road, a 537 OPS on the road for Colorado. I think the bigger thing here is Corey Seager probably will not be in the lineup for Texas. He sat yesterday. That ultimately lowered my projection. Again, I was at 8.25 after being at 8. Roof open versus closed. Once Seager was announced out of the lineup, it took me back down closer to 7.9. So got the price target back up, essentially where I opened it up for that game originally. Today, Seager out of the lineup, presumably against the left-handed starter, still dealing with a hamstring issue. And Kyle Freeland has actually been a career best pitcher this year. 3.8 walk rate, strikeout minus walk rate has been above the major league average the past 2 seasons. He's a very interesting guy, Freeland, because his career expected FIP, his strikeout minus walk rate, actually better at Coors Field than it is on the road. Very comparable, about a 4.4 to 4.6 differential. So very much the same pitcher, home and road, but just seeing a pitcher perform as well at Coors as he does in road venues is very goofy. But yeah, without Seager in here, I make this about 8.16, so under 8.5 to minus 105. I'm sorry, I make this, I forgot where I put it, but I think I'm around 7.8 currently. It's the under 8.5 to minus 112. And then if Seager is back in, I'll make this 8.2. I'd take minus 105 or better on the 8.5. So Seager in versus Seager out, there's still value on the 8.5. Just would shorten up the price target a little bit if he's back in.
Looking at underdogs here on Tuesday, we have 3. Collin has the Angels on the money line. Let's start there. The Halos floating on air after that 9th inning rally against the Padres that we mentioned at the top of the show. Now they're drawing Dylan Cease, who's looked a lot like his old self after that early season meltdown against the A's. Talk me through this play and your overall confidence in Jose Soriano getting the ball here for the Angels.
Yeah, the Angels are not a fun team to bet on generally. Obviously, saw what they did last night. It was great for Sean's bet. When I bet on the Angels, it's generally going to be on Jose Soriano starts. He's someone I like to buy on. We're helped a little bit tonight by the fact that he hasn't gotten off to the greatest start to the season. ERA around 4, increase in walks. We're still looking at a pitcher that the advanced stats think has been a little bit unlucky this year. And it's actually funny that he's underperformed his metrics because he's the type of pitcher who I would expect to generally beat his metrics. Like season after season, you see these guys who have a high ground ball rate, maybe don't miss a lot of bats. And yeah, the XFIPs and the DRAs and stuff are going to underrate that a little bit. That was the case for him last year. His XFIP was about a half run better than his ERA last year. Worse. And his DRA was about 0.8 runs worse than his ERA. But he induces a ton of ground ball, 62% ground ball rate this year. I think that'll help him out against this Padres lineup, which obviously got off to such a scorching hot start to the season. Very public team, like Sean mentioned. And yeah, Dylan Cease is scary. We haven't seen the best of Cease this year yet. You mentioned he's looked a little bit more like himself, but I still don't think we've seen the best of Cease yet this year. We could easily be looking at a game where, we look back at this game tomorrow and he goes 7 shutout innings, strikes out 12. We don't know. It's definitely a possibility, and that's why the Angels are sitting here at, plus 170 or whatever. But I do think the Angels offense has started to show a little bit of signs of life lately, a little bit better than their season-long stats say overall, just based on how they're performing, which is kind of funny to say since they're without Mike Trout right now. Zach Nato's been back for a few weeks now. I think he's a really underrated player at the top of that lineup. Yoan Moncada, actually, in about 15 games, has looked great. He always has these stretches of every season where he looks like the future all-star that top prospect lists once said he was going to be, and he's doing that right now. He's actually going against his former teammate tonight, Moncada against Cease. Just because I have to mention the White Sox once per podcast appearance, I think by contractual obligation, Moncada versus Cease, the White Sox battle. But he's taking a ton of walks. He's slugging the crap out of the ball when he does hit the ball. And so, yeah, I just think the Angels are a little bit too steep as underdogs right now in the plus 170 range. I think they should probably be around plus 150. So I like the Angels tonight as underdogs.
Just wanted to gas up Zach Neto. 410 expected WOBA, 5 homers, 7 steals in 22 games. He had 23 homers and 30 steals last year. He's a very underrated player, really good defender too. Made it to the big leagues extremely quickly. Barely spent any time in the minors, just 24 years old.
As the Angels do.
Yeah. But Neto and I think Mason Wynn, who hit that go-ahead homer for the Cardinals last night to catch that bat. Wynn has been one of my favorite young shortstops since last year. And Neto, I think, is the other. Both of these guys are going to continue to be studs going forward.
Speaking of staying hot on the road, you're back with Kansas City here, Sean, at about plus 125 in Houston. And this one starts with Chris Bubich, who's been phenomenal lately. 3 of his last 4 starts, he hasn't given up a single run across those 19 innings. No complete game shutouts, but still wildly impressive from the lefty. Is that where this handicap starts for you?
Yeah, he's fully breaking out this year. Bubic, before last year, was a pretty poor starter through 2023, a 4.9 ERA, a 4.5 expected FIP, 10% strikeout minus walk rate through 60 career starts. This year, expected ERA down to 3.4, strikeout minus walk rate up from 10% to 17%, 102 pitching plus, 3.7 body ERA. So great numbers as a starter for Bubic. Looks like he can continue to be a number 2 caliber starting pitcher going forward. And Fromber's metrics have dipped this year. In fact, 2 of the past 3 years, his ground ball rate has gone down from about 60% career to 53%. And his expected ERA has climbed above 4. And that's what he's doing this season. Ground ball rate down a little bit, strikeout minus walk rate down a little bit. I think the new strike zone is hurting Fromber, certainly to a degree. Just makes him slightly less effective, increases the chances that he's going to give up a homer. What I really like about this matchup, though, especially for Bubic, is his reverse splits. Bubic career 404 expected FIP against righties, 477 against same-sided hitting. So getting an Astros lineup that has 8 right-handed bats, and then Victor Caratina is the only switch hitting bat in there, not a single natural lefty in the lineup for Bubic, who's a guy who has reverse splits for his career, not at all concerned about the handedness matchup for him. And the Royals offense as well, finally starting to hit a little bit. They've been very unlucky this season. They have the 3rd biggest differential between their actual and expected weighted on base average. Now, even expected weighted on base still says that this is a bottom 10 offense, 23rd in baseball, but I do expect them to perform a little bit better moving forward. They put the ball in play a bunch. They don't strike out a ton. So I think the Royals, right now at least, are actually scoring runs, putting some at-bats together, make them about plus 108 in this matchup. So anything plus 117 or higher against the Astros team missing Yordan Alvarez without a single natural lefty in there for Bubic, I think is a good matchup for the reverse splits lefty.
The next one you're bringing to the table is a fade job of the Yankees pitching savior Max Fried. What intrigues you here in terms of the Mariners lineup against this Cy Young threat?
I think Brian Wu is better than Max Fried. That's probably a hot take because Wu doesn't have nearly as an established resume, but I think Brian Wu is one of the best pitchers in baseball. 2.9 expected ERA this season, 112 pitching plus, elite stuff and command. You know, you don't see many guys who have that combination of the elite stuff to go with the command. Usually you have one or the other, but a 3.3% walk rate since last year, 105 stuff plus on his fastball, 112 on his sinker, 105 on his slider. And his projections are basically the same as Max Fried. His FIP projections between 3.3 and 3.8. Fried is between 3.4 and 3.6. So a very similar range of number 2 starter, high or lower end number 1 level FIP projections with the same results or better results than Fried under the hood this season. And even going back to last year, the strikeout minus walk rate, expected ERA, all at or better than the levels Fried has pitched to. Now, Fried has the higher ground ball rate. He has the lower home run rate as a result. It's very similar comparison to the Chris Sanchez versus Matthew Liberatore comp that we made yesterday in terms of their metrics being eerily similar, but one guy having the higher ground ball rate, which kind of gives him a higher floor just because he's less likely to give up the dingers in the start. I think, though, the late game pitching advantage is where Seattle may have a sneaky edge. 2, I project their bullpen as the better unit. They've had worse results this season. Yankees are about 12th in expected FIP, strikeout minus walk rate. Seattle closer to 20th in both metrics. But in terms of pitch modeling, underlying indicators, Seattle 11th and 6th in either stuff plus, pitching plus, or body ERA. The Yankees are 27th in stuff plus and 18th in body ERA. So I do think Seattle's bullpen a little bit underrated relative to their season-long results, and I actually give them the pitching advantage throughout the entirety of this matchup. Make them about plus 105, so anything plus 115 or better on Seattle as home dogs a bet for me today.
Grant Neiffer's on deck. He'll be in the next segment with his dingers for Tuesday's slate. We're going to go through the rest of Sean's card as well as Colin's props in terms of walks. And Sean, just looking at what you're targeting here on Tuesday, a lot of overs. So let's start there with a Minnesota over 9. Now, I know that simply combining the ERAs of the 2 starting pitchers, that's not how your model works. There's far more sophistication, but it can't hurt that Woods, Richardson, and Povich are north of 9.5 when you combine their ERAs here for a total that's sitting at 9. It also it seems advantageous that the Orioles are coming off of their best offensive performance since mid-April. Any other elements of this over, in your opinion?
Yeah, both these starters faced these teams, just 5 days ago, 6 days ago. So there is some familiarity there as well, first, second, third time through the order. I don't have specific data. I actually need to do a study to find out like when guys face the same team on back-to-back starts, how they perform in start number 2 compared to start number 1, because I feel like that is an advantage for the offenses facing the same starter twice in a week, just like you see in a playoff series, that bullpen familiarity, that starting pitcher familiarity the second time they face them in a series. That is a real thing. You have faced other teams in the interim, so there's been new information in your head as a hitter, but going back to facing that same starter relatively recently, I do feel like is an advantage. Now, as you mentioned, both of these guys project as number 4, number 5 level starting pitchers, expected FIPS around 4.5, 4.8. Povich's expected ERA is above 6 this season. He has a good slider. Everything else in his arsenal is below average. The command, though, I think kind of gives him a higher floor than Semien. Semien has a good changeup. He does not throw it that often. 13% usage rate on his best pitch. So curious if he modifies his pitch mix at all going forward. But yeah, I'm not particularly high on either starting pitcher. These are 2 good bullpens. So maybe this is a spot where you're better served taking a first 5 over as opposed to a full game over, especially now that the juice has moved up. But I'd take over 9 up to minus 120. I made this around 9.75. We don't have umpire information for this game yet, though. So just be a little bit careful in terms of how aggressively you bet this one at this point in time. But, considering the starting pitcher quality relative to the bullpen quality, this could be a better spot for a first 5 overs compared to a full game.
Before we get to Collin's walk props, let's look at another over in terms of Boston. The number's sitting at 8. Do you agree with Collin's assessment of Bayo and potentially, under the hood, his mechanics, his numbers not aligning with how fortuitous or how lucky he's been in terms of his overall ERA?
Yeah, I mentioned Bayo right after Collin talked about his best bet, but just to reiterate, like he had the shoulder injury in spring training, came back late. Now the velocity down, this stuff down, like clearly trying to pitch through injury. The Red Sox also gave him a pretty big contract last preseason, so I think they're trying to get the most out of him that they can. They also don't have a ton of starting pitcher depth. And then the chemistry issues beyond that with the team. Like this Red Sox season is starting to blow up a little bit on them. Casas got hurt again. So we'll see what the Red Sox do in terms of promoting Roman Anthony. How quickly he ends up getting to the big leagues. I think a big part of that is whether Devers ends up getting traded, because then they can bring up Anthony, DH him, do whatever you want with him. The one piece I didn't mention on this game is the Tigers offense is the best it's been since 2016. They were 3rd in WRC plus in 2016. After that, 14th, 29th, 30th, 21st, 22nd, 30th, 25th, 21st. This year, they're 6th in WRC plus. So this is the best Tigers offense there's been in quite a long time. They basically have the same pitching staff that they had in the second half of last season when AJ Hinch was mixing and matching very effectively. They can't really do that for a full year because you will ultimately burn out your bullpen for the playoffs. But thought this was a contender coming into the season. Still think they're a contender after playing extremely well. They may even be the best team in the American League when it's all said and done. So I'm very high in Detroit, but their offense has been a big part why. They blew up a bunch of unders, I bet, earlier in the season because I was projecting their offense off of last year's numbers. A lot of their guys have taken a step forward this season. Even the Magic Man, Baez in center field, is actually like hitting and playing good defense. So if he's going to hit, it's a pretty good sign for this Tigers offense overall. But they seem to have pretty good player development in terms of their position player group.
Sean has 2 more bets on his card, but let's get Collin in. The Walk King is here, folks. If you haven't been read in, it's not your imagination. The strike zone has taken a dip into icy waters this season because there is significant shrinkage, and that squeezing of the zone has led to an uptick in walks across the majors and made them more viable from a prop perspective on a nightly basis. Let's start with Jesus Luzardo, who's exceeded 1.5 walks in 5 of his 8 starts this season for the Phillies, while averaging 96 pitches per start. Anything special from the Cards lineup in terms of their patience that makes you like this even more?
This is pretty much just a handedness play for me. The Cardinals are the most patient offense in baseball against left-handed pitching. Hit the over last night on Christopher Sanchez, who's generally a very walk-averse pitcher. He walked a pair. We cashed that. Luzardo's, there's a reason he's sitting around minus 180, but I still think that there's good value there considering what the Cardinals do against left-handed pitching. You mentioned Luzardo. Luzardo's obviously a much more wild pitcher than Sanchez is, so highly likely that we get to 2 walks here with the strike zone. So yeah, I like the over here, minus 180. I fully expected when I pulled up the walk props to do my work this morning that Luzardo would be sitting at 2.5. The fact that we're getting it at 1.5 is great news. So just like we hit with Sanchez last night, I'll be on Luzardo again today, over 1.5.
Let's stay in the NL East with the Mets. Senga, he's been an ATM in this market, issuing more than 1.5 walks in all but one start this season. He's actually averaging 2.4 walks per start. So is this a candidate for an alt market? And then I have to put the caveat: is there an alt market for props?
There is an alt market. It might be fun to play. DraftKings. You can ladder Senga walks all the way up to 9. If you want to bet him to walk 9 batters, it's 200 to 1. Just
how would that even happen?
Well, yeah. 3 plus walks is plus 160. 4 plus is 425. 5 plus is 1100.
Wait, how do you not say the odds for 9 plus? What does 9 plus pay out?
No, 9 plus is 200 to 1. That was what I was saying.
200 to 1. Okay.
Yeah, 200 to 1 if you walk.
AJ Burnett, 9 hit or no hits, 9 walks, 9 strikeouts, no hitter.
Exactly. I turned my head at this line big time. You mentioned Senga has been walking the world this year, just like he did in his other full season. Again, I really expected to see this at 2.5. The fact that it's 1.5 and at a reasonable number, it's one of those where like I almost overthink my process because I'm like, what do the books know that I don't know? Why is this so low? And I think the reason it's so low is because they're underrating what the Pirates can do against right-handed pitching. And I'm not saying what they can do, like they're a bad offense, especially against right-handed pitching. They have a 78 weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching. They also have the 6th highest walk rate in baseball against right-handed pitching. Bad offenses can still walk a lot. We see this a lot, and that's where I find a lot of value in the walks market against bad offenses. The team right above Pittsburgh in walk rate against right-handed pitching is the White Sox. They have a 79 weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching. Their walk rate is 10.2%. Pittsburgh, 78 weighted runs created plus against right-handed pitching. Their walk rate, 10.2%. They walk more against right-handed pitching than the Dodgers, than the Cubs, than the Tigers, who we just talked about, than the Braves. So, the books aren't stupid. I just think that they're underrating it a little bit and the likelihood of the walks. Senga's obviously been wild. Generally, when a pitcher has been this wild, I look to kind of zag and be like, well, everyone's expecting the walks. I did this with Robbie Ray earlier this year. Everyone's expecting the walks. Now's the time to bet the under. It worked out with Robbie Ray. I don't think we're quite there yet with Senga, so I'm still betting the over here at 1.5. And yeah, if you want to ladder it, what the hell? Maybe go up to 4 or 5. I don't know if I'm going to bet 9 plus at 200 to 1, but it's funny that it's out there at least.
All right, Sean, let's finish up on your card. We got the Pope Leo special talking about the White Sox over 9 in their matchup with the Reds. Jonathan Cannon has been getting hit and hit hard lately, allowing 18 hits over his last 2 starts. So I'm assuming you're banking on the Reds basically running him off in this game and getting into the White Sox bullpen.
Yeah, definitely hoping the Reds can score some runs, but Andrew Abbott just remains absolutely confounding to me. And the profile, is equally as confounding as he has been to handicap. 2.25 ERA, 2.65 expected ERA, so deserves to have pitched quite well. A 3.8 expected FIP. Pitch modeling metrics absolutely hate this guy. 5.13 body ERA, 95 stuff plus, 93 location plus, and his career expected FIP is 4.7, but he's pitched to an ERA significantly lower than that. So a guy I mentioned last week, scouts never liked him coming up. Remain confused as to how he continues to be effective. Nobody really knows why he's so effective. The 2.6 expected ERA certainly suggests, as I said, that he's deserved the results he's pitched to this season. But I do view him as a likelier than not regression candidate going forward. I'm not going to say likely regression candidate. I'm going to say likelier than not because he is the most, I'm not even going to say enigmatic pitcher in baseball, but he is certainly, I believe, the most difficult pitcher to handicap because the actual results do not align with the strikeout minus walk rate, which is about league average, or the expected FIP or the FIP projections, which all say he is a below average starter and closer to that career 4.7 expected FIP mark. All projection systems think this is a number 4 starter, not an ace. So we'll see what Andrew Rabbit does the rest of his career. But overall, I am lower on him than market. Project this total around 9.7. 72 degrees, rainy, going to be a little humid there tonight. The wind not blowing out, but I think the humidity should boost the run scoring here. So make this total, as I said, about 9.7 over 9 up to minus 120. And hopefully Abbott starts to regress a little bit tonight.
I've been coming on podcasts with Sean since 2023, and I swear every time I'm on an episode, it's when Andrew Abbott is pitching, and I've just been listening to Sean say expected regression out of Andrew Abbott, and he's right. He's right. Everything says expected regression. I have Andrew Abbott on my Dynasty Fantasy Baseball team, and every time I have to put him in my lineup, I'm terrified that he's just going to walk the world and give up a couple of bombs, especially pitching in Cincinnati. But yeah, he just continues to confound. 3 years running now, Andrew Abbott, and he's facing an offense that's one of the worst offenses in baseball against left-handed pitching. So either they're going to bomb him, or we're going to need to rely on the Reds' offense to carry us tonight.
Yeah, both his strikeout and his walk rate are at career. Well, I guess the walk rate's at a career worst mark. The strikeout rate is at 32% this season, which is a huge breakout. He's at 19% last year, 26% the year before. So the strikeouts way up, but the walks also up with the strike zone up to 12%. So it's just a bizarre profile. It's what I have a lot of difficulty handicapping. Overall, strikeout minus walk rate up to 19% is a good sign. His ground ball rate, I didn't even mention, he has a 25% ground ball rate. How are you surviving in Cincinnati with a 25% ground ball rate unless every single fly ball is a pop-up? That does not make any sense at all to me. So yeah, I can't really explain Andrew Abbott. Like, everything logically says this is a guy who should give up a ton of home runs at home. 1.5 for his career. I think that's where the regression ultimately comes. If you're going to carry a 25% ground ball rate, there's no way you're maintaining a home run rate of 1.1. That should be closer to 1.5.
Let's close things out with the Cubs against the Fish. The wind is still blowing in directly from center field at Wrigley, albeit closer to a breeze than a strong gust. But you still like the Cubs to grab an early lead here, play them on the first 5, and then under 8.5.
Yeah, it's the same weather basically as Monday, 62 degrees, not strong winds blowing in, but 5 miles an hour, which for Wrigley does have an effect. And this triggered, as I said, our Action Lab system yesterday for Wrigley Field unders. This triggered 2 other systems today in terms of under wagers, both a general wind-in system, and then also a understreak system, which basically is handicapping teams off of recent offensive performance and expecting them to continue to struggle to score. I think it's just looking for offenses that are cold at the moment, relative to market, certainly. I mean, the Cubs put up 5 runs yesterday, all in 1 inning. But I think that understreak system is like 40-11 or something this year. It's been up and down in recent years. It's absolutely crushing this year. Teams who have been cold have stayed cold across multiple games. And I guess those teams have happened to play each other quite a bit because that system is absolutely crushed this season. So that Cubs, Wrigley Field under system, this is the one that's most relevant here. 294, 194, and 23 since 2005. That's a 60.2% win rate. You could just put your money down on that every single time, assuming I align with it on my projected total. It's a near 16% ROI. It really doesn't get better than that in terms of finding a system that's actionable across 20 plus years, or not 20 years, but 17 years. 20 years. I'm still living in 2022, apparently. Across 20 years worth of data, a system with a 60% win rate and a 16% ROI, about as strong as you're going to find, and correlated obviously to wind and weather, something that people may not factor in. People factor it in now, but back in the day, certainly didn't factor in as much. Ben Brown is, the big story here because he just throws 2 pitches. It's just fastball, knuckle curve. The knuckle curve grades out really well. The fastball does not, but he throws the fastball like 55% of the time, 60% of the time, which means he can only throw the curveball about 35 to 40% of the time because he's just 2 pitches essentially. He'll throw a changeup a couple times a game. That's really it. The fastball has gotten pounded. An expected WOBA over 4 this year, or over 4 last year. This year it's closer to 360. his knuckle curve is a very effective pitch. Expected WOBA of 183 last season, 295 this year. So setting up the curve is basically all he's trying to do, but he doesn't have a third option beside that, aside from a rarely used changeup. So we'll see if he uses the changeup a little bit more going forward. It doesn't seem like he's intending to at the moment. That said, there's a big disagreement between Ben Brown, like Andrew Abbott, between the stuff models and the actual results. Whereas Abbott has good results, bad pitch modeling metrics. Ben Brown has very good pitch modeling metrics and bad underlying results. Not bad underlying results, because his career expected FIP is 3.6. His strikeout minus walk rate is near 19%, which are both great, but his ERA is much higher. And the pitching models, because of the fastball, only put him at a 95 stuff plus and a 4.6 body ERA. So I actually said that backwards. He's very similar to Abbott in that he has had good results or good indicators, but the pitch modeling metrics, because he's only throwing 2 pitches and the fastball grades out poorly, don't really think it can maintain going forward. But that said, the strikeout minus walk rate is still 12 points better than Vicente Beloso. Beloso, a 5.14 body ERA, a 5.5 expected FIP, walks a ton of guys, and against a very patient and powerful Cubs offense, I do think the Cubs have a significant pitching advantage for at least the first half, despite Brown's potential enigmatic nature. But make the Cubs about minus 280 for the first 5 innings, would take their money line up to minus 260. And then the total today with the wind and weather projected normally on a normal day, I would make this about 8.5. I lowered it to 7.5 for today. So under 8 to about minus 108. And then the Cubs first 5 up to minus 260.
Before we get out of here, let's toss it over to Grant Neiffer from Scores and Odds for some home run bets on today's slate.
Thanks, guys. All right, it's Dinger Tuesday. You got a 50% profit boost over on FanDuel, and I got some bangers. Got a 3-leg parlay. Parlay all of them together, 50% profit boost. Get 310 to 1. Massive odds here. Let's get right into it. First off, we got Kyle Manzardo to hit home run. We're on plus 440 over on FanDuel. Gets a matchup versus Quinn Priester. Priester is not a bad pitcher, and he's actually probably due for some positive regression when it comes to home runs versus lefties, giving up over 2 home runs per 9 in his career, 2 lefties, but still 27% fly ball rate. Grades out is a slightly above average matchup here for Manzardo, who does get the ball up in the air at a 50% clip so far in his short career. Dude has a ton of pop, around a 15% barrel rate so far this year. The odds are just a little bit too low. Priester, again, probably due for some positive regression, but still, I can't ignore those over 2 home runs per 9 in his career to lefties. Might struggle here. Wind blowing left to right a little bit over in the stadium, and temps near 70s. I really like Manzardo hit a bomb. Next up, Brandon Lowe, plus 600 over at FanDuel. Lowe is a guy that's always had a decent amount of pop, right around a 30 home run pace on a 162 game sample over the last few years. Been hitting around 20 and 100, so still pretty good. Gets a matchup versus Barrios. Barrios has struggled heavily with lefty power in his career, giving up around 1.5 home runs per 9 with above average fly ball and hard contact numbers. Ballpark's a bit of a downgrade going from Tampa Bay and that small minor league stadium over to Toronto, but still Lau has been playing pretty much his entire career over in a bad ballpark at the old Trop. Great power hitter, great matchup, great odds. I'm rolling with it. And last up, Ben Rice, plus 450 to hit a home run. Gets a matchup versus Wu. Wu has been a good pitcher in his career, and he's suppressed power to righties, but has struggled versus lefties. Go around 1.5 home runs per 9 to lefties. The ballpark is a bit of a downgrade, but Rice has been fantastic this season. Barrel rate around 15%. Good hard contact numbers. Great fly ball numbers. Dude has a ton of pop. And again, the matchup versus Wu is good as he struggles with lefty power. Again, parlay all of them together, get around 310 to 1 with that 50% profit boost over on FanDuel. One more picks like these, go check me out in the Action Network app. I'm out of here. Pockets!
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the pod. Also, check out the Action Network Discord, where you can cut it up with Action Network experts as well as Major League Baseball betting enthusiasts. We'll be back on Friday for more best bets. For Sean Zerillo and Collin Whitchurch, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and good luck with all your bets.